On a warm July day, two rivals stand face to face. The silence is broken as each of them fire their weapons. One lie dead at the end of the duel, and the next life is impacted in a number of ways. However, his life isn't the only one that's impacted. Each American citizen life will be impacted by this duel. This is the duel between Burr and Hamilton, the true story. Hello, this is Joey Adams. Thank you for clicking on my discussion post. As the intro tells you, we're going to talk about the story of Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. The real reason I really like to do this is because it's a famous musical called Hamilton, and many times this can get the kids really excited. However, they can play loose with history a little bit, and so I like to emphasize this is what we really think happened. And the cool thing about this is that a lot of people at the time didn't agree on just what the ramifications of the duel should be. And the first one I'm going to look at comes from South Carolina and looks at, should we really be complaining that much about dueling? The first work I will look at is called Observations on South Carolina's Memorial upon the Subject of Dueling. The author of this is unknown. It is just listed posthumous. I really enjoyed this work because it looks at how some people were still fighting in favor of the act of dueling. The author lists points that the people who are against dueling use. Then from there, he tries to address each of these points. And while most of us wouldn't agree with his outcome, it is very interesting to see how he attacks each of these points. For example, the first point he lays out says that dueling tramples on rights of humans, both common law and divine. He brings up the Ten Commandments, saying, are you guys talking about Moses and his 10 Commandments that he brought down from Mount Sinai? If you are, then hey guys, everything that's killing isn't murder. So this really isn't breaking divine rules. The rest of the work goes just like that, bringing up their points and trying to knock it down. And then the writer has the audacity to say that the death of Hamilton was accidental. The takeaway from this shows a whole lot of stuff. It shows that because of the shooting of Hamilton, laws against dueling were changing. Laws that have already been on the books were actually being enforced now. Places that didn't have laws were having laws written about them. And this wasn't a smooth transition. This would make a good read for many students. While it's not heavy on technical jargon, it still helps the reader understand just what was going on at the time. That's what I love about my set of South Carolina. You know, you can always get an interesting take from us. This next take is going to be a more somber one, looking at why do people do this stuff? Is it worth it? And it comes out of New York. This next work I looked at is called The Danger of Ambition Considered. It was a sermon done in New York in the year 1804, around a month after Hamilton was killed. Reverend that gave the sermon was named Ezekiel Woodruff. Reverend looks at ambition and how ambition can make people do things that they wouldn't normally do. He cites many biblical figures while he's discussing this, such as Saul, David, and Job. In contrast to the article that we wrote before, this really isn't trying to convince anyone of the wrongness of dueling per se. The goal of this work is to try to get people to understand that they don't have to do things to prove that they're better than anyone else, that they can't let ambition and pride cloud their judgment. So, overall, a very different take on the same subject. While we have one that goes in and tries to tear down other people's viewpoints to defend dueling, this one we have someone saying it's not about if it's legal or not, it's about if it's the right thing to do. This is a good work to bring up because it shows how many people at the time was looking at dueling and saying, hey, we have to do better. And when we look back in the history books, we see so many founding fathers. This preacher was saying, we don't have to do that. This take is very good for students to read because it is more like what we think about today. No matter who we support for president, most of us wouldn't want to see them out shooting the other person. But this was something that happened back then. Hamilton even lost his son before getting shot himself. So this work would be good to show that, hey, that people back then knew that these things were wrong. Both of these can really help in the way that we teach. It can also help in the way that the students read. These are two very different works, and it can help them become competent in different aspects of literacy when it comes to reading historical texts. Many historical texts are heavy reads. Both of these are fairly easy to read, and thus students in a survey class get their feet wet when it comes to reading historical texts. So as you can see, that's a very different take from the first one that we went through. Uh, I think it's super important that we grab students' attention. And doing something like with Hamilton can really do that. Some of the students are singing the song, some of them really want to go see the musical. And so we can say, hey, we may not can take you to the musical, but we can take you and view a real part of history uh, in the class. So thank you so much for clicking on my presentation once more, and I hope to see you next week.